Call the meeting to order. Are there any items to add to an agenda? Seeing none.
Oh, sorry.
Did you have one?
I have two that I wanted to actually add. The first one is security at city facilities and town center.
This is a open meeting.
Yes.
Okay, so it's
okay.
that. Okay,
Yeah,
you're good with that. Okay.
Staff, I've given staff the heads up. So
That's
we're
an
okay.
odd. Yeah.
Okay.
Security at town center.
I'll say public safety.
Public safety at public facilities and
Town center parking.
town center park. Okay.
Thank you.
No. Madam Clerk.
Thank you. First item are minutes of the council and committee meeting held Monday, February 17th. The recommendation is that the committee approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second.
O'Neill and Nicholson, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 is a delegation from Mr. Damian Kettlewell of the Jack Group regarding an application for a permanent change to a liquor primary license for Ruse Pub and Grill located at 2962 Christmas Way. And this relates to item 6 on this evening's regular council agenda. Just ask Mr. Kettlewell.
Good afternoon, Mr. Kettle.
Good afternoon, gentlemen and madams.
We won't introduce. We've got name tags now, so.
Yes. My name is Damian Kettlewell, and I'm representing our family business, which is at Ruse Pub and Grill across the highway there. And we have a application in to ask for leniency from your new patio hours for our liquor primary. And their new patio hours call for a closing of patios at 9 o'clock on Sunday and Thursday and 11 o'clock on Fridays and Saturdays. And we have an application in to extend our operating hours till 2 a.m. and to open at 9 a.m., which would have been beneficial the last couple of weeks with the Olympics. We weren't able to open till 11, so that would have been kind of nice. But regardless, the main focus for us is to be open till 2. We are in a non-residential area surrounded by primarily commercial and industrial tenants. Like ourselves, we have a tenant. We have our lease until 2029, options on the lease until 2029. And the staff has been great to deal with here, and the staff report was supportive for our application. So I just want to come in today to introduce myself and to thank you for the opportunity to do business in Coquitlam and see if you had any questions regarding our application.
Wow, a delegation that opens with, does anyone have any questions?
I like it.
Could have
Councillor
had
Zarrillo.
martinis.
I do have a question. Thank you very much for coming in. And you made notice about, or you made mention about the Olympics and being able to open a little bit earlier in the morning. Is there anything that precludes you from being able to be open at 9 but just not serving alcohol until 11? Are you able to open at 9 and serve breakfast and coffee? And
We can open a little for food service. And so it's really, the 9 a.m. isn't really a big, I mean, this day and age, people just don't, who has to drink before noon? You probably have a substance abuse problem if you drink before noon too regularly. So our main focus is the 2 a.m. closing, definitely with the young demographic and keeping people in Coquitlam, not going to the downtown core, and keeping people local. That's our main focus. But it would be nice every 4 years. You got the Olympics, you got the Euro every 4 years, you get the World Cup, it's coming up this year. So when there's international events happening in foreign time zones, it's nice to have that option, but it's a pretty rare occasion. So, yeah.
thank you.
Good. Craig.
On the opening, on the staying, I guess staying open later, is your focus on the 2 a.m. Opening, or staying open till 2 a.m., or is it on the patio? Because you've mentioned both. Is it later hours on the patio, or sort of what's your main priority?
Well, my understanding is, in discussions with staff, is if we change our license change, operating hours change until 2 a.m., then we have to, at that point, based on the new bylaws, we will have to close our patio at 11 p.m., which is not conducive to a nice social environment, asking your customers to leave the patio. So we're asking for an exemption to your patio policy.
So it's the patio policy,
Yeah.
because you're right, it's not a bylaw, but it's just a sort of a staff report or study that we've done that has said, that the two. And so I think what's happening is that as groups are coming forward for their application, we're sort of asking them to conform to the whole thing. In some cases, patio hours are changing when they ask for the other. Mm-hmm. So what you're really asking for is the 2 a.m., but not wanting your patio hours to revert back to the new thing. Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
You have control over both issues.
you mentioned your long-term there. You're still there for another 15 years?
We have our lease our lease is, it expires in 3 years, and then we have 2 5-year options. So,
Okay.
I know it's a redevelopment property, so.
Well, it's certainly, that was one of my questions, because you're going to be right across the street, right across probably a pedestrian overpass to the SkyTrain station.
Yes. Yeah.
And it certainly has been the city's stated position that that's going to be some density there. There's going to be some housing. So one of the considerations we'll undoubtedly have to place on this is not what are you today, but rather to what extent does what you or hope to become, which is a patio that's open till 2 in the morning, how will that impact the neighboring future uses? And so that's among the challenges that we're going to have to examine, obviously. Councillor O'Neill?
Yeah, thank you. Am I correct in, I recall getting an invitation to an event at this pub within the last 3 months, I think.
Yes,
that there was
yes.
a major, some renovations and sort of a relaunch of the...
We did, yes.
So there was what size of investment did you put into the building?
What size?
Yeah, just generally.
Oh, like over 100,000 into painting and new furniture, and so yeah, it's a challenging location, to be honest with you, across the street from where all the action is. But it's in this day and age, people want to drive, which makes sense. You shouldn't drive if you're drinking, of course, and we fully endorse that. And so yeah, we're looking at this as a means to be sustainable fiscally as we move forward to hopefully more development, because it is a fiscally challenging business right now. There's a ton of competition in this local area, with Brown's opening up, with the Burke Mountain House over in Coquitlam opening up. So it's a very challenging business. I mean, most restaurants fail within 2 years, and we see ourselves as more of a restaurant than a pub, actually. That's the only way you can survive in this day and age, because people are drinking less for health reasons. And so we're focused on our food program, and we want people... some people just want that flexibility. Downtown, you can stay out till 4 o'clock, and so, Coquitlam is increasingly an urban area, so it seems to make sense that we should, maybe there can be a time limit if the towers come in one day, as I'm sure they will. We have a 1 acre. The property is on 4 acres. We have 1 acre east out, and then there's other 3 acres where the towing company is. And so that's kind of what's happening, and I think the property's probably going to be sold in the next couple of years, wouldn't surprise me, as the SkyTrain gets closer to completion. So I'm fully open to flexibility if there's going to be towers by 2018, 2019 on the property, whereby we could have some sort of clause. There's everywhere in other urban environments, there's always signs saying when you leave the property, please be quiet. There's things that you can do like that. I know I watched the gentleman from Woody's, Gordy Cartwright's presentation to council, and he operates in a more of an urban environment, and they make take a lot of actions, it seems like, to be sensitive to local neighbors, and we'll be of the same predicament as well, same issue, to be sensitive to local folks. But right now, we don't really have anyone in the local area.
Okay, and I'll explore that a little bit. You're talking about the potential for you agreeing ahead of time, possibly, to a sunset, where you apply to reduce your hours again, or you agree to reduce your hours on the patio if it becomes an issue, or if under certain circumstances, under certain parameters.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if the developer has some concerns on the development permit that people aren't going to want to buy a condo for X amount of dollars with a pub open till 2 a.m. right there, then, I mean, yeah, we open up to look at it. It's kind of we want to work with the needs of the local community, and but it's nice to have an opportunity for the youth to stay local. I mean, you can go to Woody's is open till 2. You can go to the French Quarter, or now the Town Hall, I believe, is open till 1. Golden Spike, which is shutting down eventually, is open till 2, I believe. I mean, it's a challenging business. I'm sure you've been to Mountain Shadow Pub through the years. That's shutting down. Golden Spike is going to shut down eventually. So it's a challenging business. We need to run things really tight, and that extra hour of operating will bring in an extra $100 to $300 in those sales in those 2 hours. So that'll help with our business to be sustainable.
And the issue again is you're saying about a pub staying open till 2. I don't know that that's the issue. I think the issue is the patio.
Well, we like to keep our patio up. We don't want to shut down our patio at 11 o'clock on a Friday night.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
Currently, the patio is open till what time? It's open till 1 a.m., so
yeah.
Till close. We haven't had the issues. Okay, that's good. The good neighbor policy, I think that's what you were referring to, and so that's something you would be signing on to anyway. The opening would be from 9, or you'd open at 9, so you gain 2 hours in the morning.
We likely probably wouldn't open. It's not unless there's a special international event. We probably won't open it.
So you're not looking for that. So really,
we like the option though.
When I'm looking at your change, it's instead of 1 a.m. being able to open till 2 on that Friday and Saturday night, the one you already have, but able to gain that extra hour, your patio now doesn't conform with the new guidelines, which is the 9 o'clock closing. So what you're hoping is to keep what you have, but stay open that extra hour on the weekend.
Please.
Okay, good. I think that'll be a good discussion tonight.
Yep, Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have no problem with your request. I think for 1 minute that we have discussed that we will now have about the fourth pub that's come before us for relaxing.
The discussion will be tonight, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think that what we ought to do is, as I said before, bring all the pub owners in, and let's have a meeting with all of them, because, I think we need to standardize the operations.
Okay.
I was in that business for many years, so I know what I'm talking about.
Okay. I don't think there's any other questions for you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody. And thanks for all your hard work. Cheers.
Madam Clerk.
Item 3 is Report of Manager Economic Development related to the biannual Economic Development Activity Report from July to December 2013. And we do have introductory comments by the Deputy City Manager and a presentation by our Manager of Economic Development.
Thank you very much. Through the Chair, the Economic Development Activity Report for the end of 2013 is before committee today. I just want to acknowledge David Monroe, our Manager of Economic Development, for his work in this area and for compiling the report. It's been another very strong year for the City of Coquitlam. Our construction numbers were down a little bit from the record levels of 11 and 12, but it was still another very strong year. I think Coquitlam is a desirable destination for investors and people to come and live because of many positive attributes of the community, and that was really underscored in the trimester report last week that showed our population number as being just under 139,000, which represented basically a 7,000 increase in residents in the past 2 years, and the highest growth rate in the region, with the exception of Anmar, which I'm not sure is really a good comparison. But so lots of very positive things happening in Coquitlam, and I think we anticipate that to continue next year and beyond. David has a PowerPoint presentation to run through some of the numbers, and would be pleased to answer any questions. And with that, I'll just turn things over to David.
Thank you, Mr. Devant. Just before we get started, Your Worship, I'd like to introduce our new tourism manager, Eric Calnins. Eric, who's joined us today. It's his first day, so
Welcome.
we're very happy to have him on board.
Good choice.
When I met him this morning, I mentioned that the bar is quite high, as lifted by Councillor Reid. Councillor Reid has placed the bar. High expectations. Great to have you on board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll get started for the biannual report, and from July to December, and we'll cover a bit of a market outlook from what's predicted for 2014, do a little bit of an overview of what transpired in 2013, and then we'll cover our economic development priorities and then open the floor to questions. So 2013 proved to be a very interesting year for the BC economy. Roughly halfway through the year, they adjusted our GDP growth down from roughly 2.5% to 1.5%. And a lot of that was attributed to the provincial election and people waiting for that to happen, as well as the U.S. economy not recovering as fast as they expected. And there's a few other factors as well. The housing market softened a bit. As you look into 2014 through to 2017, they're predicting about 2.5% growth. A lot of that is due, a lot of our exports go down to the United States, about 75% in that range. And the U.S. economy is predicted to go up, GDP growth there about 3 to 3.5%. So that's going to have a positive impact on what we're doing. And then you look at BC in general, Metro Vancouver, with our exports market, with the dollar dropping down, it's predicted that our exports will grow, and our international investment interest is quite high. We have the positive investor confidence, more or less tied to some of the future projects up north, and then obviously our immigration numbers. And all those factors are tying into setting a positive environment for 2014. If you look on the residential side, housing starts forecast for Canada is roughly the same as last year, decreased about 0.3%, but BC's to increase about 2.8%. And if you look at that for 2013, Canada decreased by about 12.5%, but BC stayed around just about the same, about 1.5% decrease. So those are real positive numbers as we move ahead. And then, overall for the building permit values, we stayed pretty close to the 2012 numbers. We're down 8%, but relatively speaking, it's similar to last year. And then the commercial and other category increased by 7%. A lot of that has to do with infill that was going on in the industrial areas, but also when Centennial High School put in their permit, that brought up the institutional value. So those are good numbers for us to see. Metro Vancouver, when you look at the commercial market, specifically the office, it was a pretty busy year. Right now, Vancouver has the largest build-out of office space in the last 20 years, and that's the highest class of office space. And what you're seeing is there's a lot of people moving in to those areas. What's happening, the trend that's happening is because of that, the next office space down, say Class AA, is there's some vacancy increasing there because people are moving into better facilities. And as the forecast sales for it's about $408 million for 2014. Compare that to last year, the forecasted estimate was about $482 million in office sales. So it's roughly pretty much the same as we move forward. And Coquitlam's market is not very large at this point, but there is some new office space coming online, particularly in the city center area. If we transition into the retail market, again, it's steady leasing. If you have good space, good locations, they're going up. They're going pretty fast. This year, we're predicting about $730 million in sales, and that's for the Metro Vancouver market. Last year, it was around $1 billion, so it's coming down a little bit. What you saw last year, there was a lot of investment from international real estate companies or U.S. real estate companies that were coming into the Canadian market, particularly in the Vancouver area. Coquitlam's market, again, we've got, it's been positive because of our growth and also our proximity to other markets. And then you can see there's a list of some of the businesses that have either relocated or had some significant expansions on the retail side in 2013. On the industrial side, really positive numbers. If you look at the Metro Vancouver area, the sales last year were around $1 billion. And predicted to go around $900 million. So the $1 billion from 2013 in sales is actually up quite a bit from the previous year, 2012. And there's been a lot of activity in the Metro Vancouver market. If anything, there's a bit of a shortage of industrial space in the Metro Vancouver area. That's why you see some businesses moving further east, out into the Fraser Valley, particularly if they're building new buildings. But if you look at us for Coquitlam market, our vacancy rates dropped substantially from 2011, down from 9.9% to 4.4% in 2013. And a lot of that's, I'd like to say economic development was responsible for that, but we'd be lying. It's market driven. But I mean, a lot of that has to do with businesses were moving out during the construction phases of the Port Mann Highway 1 project. And as that got nearer to completion, businesses started to move back. And if you look at the businesses that are moving here, predominantly they're from our neighboring communities. So we've seen a lot of relocations from the Burnaby side, also in the Tri-Cities. And there's a lot of demand for kind of smaller spaces as we moved ahead, people going from, say, 2,500 square feet to 4,000. And again, there's some businesses that relocated. Just on the technology side, you see two smaller businesses there, Rima Networks and eSecure Data. They are hosting services, and part of the reason they moved here is because of the presence of QNet. So it's kind of nice to see that moving forward. And we're also getting a lot of distribution companies looking at warehousing distribution, looking at relocating as well. A lot of that has to do with our location. Switching gears a little bit, we'll talk about some of the economic development activities for 2013. We'll start with business retention and expansion. And so obviously this is the program where we go out and meet with local businesses and find ways that we can help them. So we did about 110 meetings last year. And what we take the most pride out of is the assistance requests. So roughly two requests from every meeting. And those can be anything from who do we talk to at City Hall about getting building permits to who can we talk to at Douglas College for finding work experience students, et cetera. So those are giving some value back to the business community for our efforts. And then we're also collaborating with the Tri-Cities Chamber of Commerce on what we'll call as professional development opportunities for the local business community, whether it's Social Media Mondays or Small Business Week. On the marketing side, our objective has been to develop the economic development and tourism marketing materials to enhance what we already have. I won't go through everything there, but basically we're trying to find projects that we partner with other organizations, with other divisions within City Hall to try to come up with some stuff that will help us provide our message on why people should invest in Coquitlam. And a lot of thanks goes to corporate communications and community planning, as well as other divisions on various projects. And obviously Parks and Rec with the travel guide. Without their input, we wouldn't be able to make those projects happen. So, and with the travel guide, that was a really big success story for us this year. We got about 18,500 copies distributed to date, and we got just about 10,000 views online. So that's really been creating some interest on the tourism front. And the other big one that we accomplished was getting the City of Coquitlam listed on the Hello BC website, which is the province's tourism website. And so it hadn't been, we weren't part of that website to this date until end of last year. So one of Mr. Calman's projects will be to review the content we have there to see if there's some things that we can add to it and make it better than it is now. But the important thing was to get us listed. On the business attraction side, again, the objective here is to promote the community and the investment opportunities here. And we get out and we do presentations to various groups, maybe industry associations based in Vancouver or real estate groups. That's a big part of our business attractions, developing the relationships with the industrial and commercial realtors from outside of this area, and so they know what's going on here, as well as visiting with consulate offices and the provincial and federal ministries and let them know what's going on in Coquitlam. And so basically what we've been doing, there's a lot of presentations, but we also get a lot of inbound inquiries. And I must say last year was probably the most successful so far. It proves that the work we did at building those relationships with the real estate community has paid off, because we were getting more inquiries coming through our office, and so we could pass them on to get zoning clarifications and help them do things to make the projects move forward. So that was rewarding to see. And then we do obviously some advertising opportunities, Office Space magazine, BC Tech magazine, those kinds of things. We're very strategic about that and trying to make sure that it fits our overall objectives, not only economic development wise, but corporately. Also in 2013, as you're aware, we were very proud to win the Open for Business Award, being one of 7 communities to receive that award last year. Overall, I think it's just a great recognition of council and staff's effort at coming up with policies and projects and initiatives that are enhancing our business environment, business climate in Coquitlam. So we're quite happy about that, and part of the reward was to get a $10,000 grant, which we'll be using to go towards the development of a site selector guide and a community profile. And a site selector guide is just on a larger corporations, when they're looking at sites, they have a guide that they hire consulting companies to look at factors, and basically it's all statistical oriented. And so we'll start with that one. It's a smaller document, and then we'll move on to the community profile. But that's one of the key pieces that we're missing to date. So we'll start working on that. And just in closing, our economic development priorities for 2014, it should say there, sorry, are the BRE efforts, continuing business attraction, developing our marketing materials, and obviously implementing and managing the tourism program. So we'll continue on promoting Coquitlam as well as a destination for investment. And with that, I'll open the floor for questions.
There you go. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Office space. Obviously we want people to be able to work where they live to the greatest extent we can have that, and to that end I think we need office space. I'm not sure where we are in terms, you talked about the vacancy rate for industrial. I don't know whether we have a measured vacancy rate for office space. I don't know what we have in terms of supply, in terms of class A, class whatever classes, and I don't know how our rates compare. Is it economically advantageous for somebody to locate in Coquitlam as opposed to downtown Vancouver or the fringes of Burnaby? I could ask a lot more questions, but you can probably provide more answers than I've asked questions so far.
Through the chair to Councillor Nicholson, it's we could talk about this one for a bit. In general, they don't track the vacancy rate for Coquitlam. It's basically lumped into a broader region, so it's really hard for us to track. But also, there's a very limited quantity of office space in Coquitlam at this point. So, based on that assumption, I would say that our vacancy rate is probably fairly low. Where we are right now is office space development is very, very, very competitive. Certain businesses, if you look at the vacancy rates for, say, Vancouver, it's quite a bit lower than it would be for Surrey or Langley, and there's different dynamics that go into it. But we're also seeing a lot of development in New West and Burnaby and Surrey around the SkyChain stations. So it's by no means is there not an opportunity for Coquitlam. I think there's a huge opportunity. I think we're in one of those situations right now. It's kind of the chicken and the egg situation. Where there's some developers that have approvals to build a significant office mid-sized tower in city center in particular, but they're probably not going to move forward until they can say that they've got X amount leased out, pre-leased, because that affects their cash flows and to get their loans and all that. So I think what we're trying to do is, I think on the planning side, we're putting the policies like the TDS and working on some of those neighborhood plans that will put those factors in place so that when the market decides Coquitlam is ready, it will be ready. So I think that's a big step forward that the real estate community has noticed. And on the economic development side, we all we can do is get out there and promote it as a potential destination for office, and then hope that as a team, when we work with everyone else, whether it's planning or city lands or whatever, that we can differentiate ourselves from other communities. But yeah, there's a huge opportunity, and there's been reports that have shown that vacancy rates closer to the station are substantially lower than further out. So, is that?
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Skor?
Thank you. The one thing I think you need to be very aware of what's happening, that here's the situation. We've been selling a lot of houses to investors, offshore investors. The federal government has closed the door on the $200,000, $400,000, $800,000 investments. And they used to get about 3,000 applications a year. They're now closed the door on them. So I don't know whether they're ever going to open up the door or not. But as long as that door is closed, yes, certainly, people buy a business, small business and that type of deal, they will also buy a residential place. But with the doors being closed, I don't think that they will be. So that's probably the sales on residential, whether it be, apartments or single-family dwelling, is going to slow up. Now, I heard this on the radio the other day. How true it is, I don't know. But we have to be ready for that.
Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, thanks. I've got one specific question and a broad one. I'll go with the specific one first. With the travel guide,
Yep.
you talked about 18,500 copies distributed in the online version of the guide, being visited 9,900 times. And you use that figure as sort of a validation of the worth of the printed guide, but I don't understand the logic. Why does that necessarily reflect the success of the printed guide and the fact that you're able to distribute that many?
I guess through the chair to Councillor O'Neill, it's demand. For us, all we can really judge on is when we get further orders, when we've distributed through, say, like Tourism Chilliwack, Tourism Abbotsford, and if they're running out of stock and they want more, that's a measure for us.
Oh, okay.
I think as we move forward, those numbers are very important if we're trying to sell ads in the travel guide to help with the sustainability of the project, because they will ask us how many have been distributed, how many views have been online. So we're tracking all those things. It's not a matter of tracking them just to justify the existence of a travel guide. It's done to justify the future sustainability of the project. And so if we have those numbers ready at hand, it'll help with the sales. All I can really say about I think it's a darn good thing that we've distributed 18,500, because if we were doing 6,000, if there's only demand for 6,000, then it's not worth doing, right? But there's demand for it, and the feedback we're getting from the other tourism organizations is that people are liking it, and they're taking it. And the tourism organizations themselves have said that they like the style and what we've done with our travel guides. So I don't know if that directly answers.
Oh, that does. I didn't understand. I thought that that perhaps, well, somebody just happens to see a book up there and gets curious and goes on the website, finds it, or maybe somebody just starts thinking Coquitlam generally, and they're living in Winnipeg, and here's a travel guide to find out about it. So that wouldn't really necessarily affect the success of the printed version, but I see how they're related. Otherwise, it's so of those 18,500, were some of those reorders then? So people were running out. So that's significant, I would think. So because you could have blanketed a whole bunch of places 18,500 right off the start, and they could all be sitting there.
Yes.
But if these are reorders, that's significant.
Yes, through the chair, we had we stocked the company that distributes through YBR, and so they're gradually knocking down those numbers. But we've had reorders from a number of organizations, and we've been very strategic about where we place them as well, because we want to make sure that they're in the key areas, right? We're not just dispersing them to be dispersed. And I guess the last thing we're trying to balance both of them, because with the way everything's moving to the online world, there's a significant amount of people that, as we move forward, maybe we don't have to have as many printed versions because there's more people that want to move towards online. So we're trying to balance both of those.
Great. And the general question I have deals with business retention and business attraction. Your report has basically told me that you're given this city and its policies, and you're going out there and selling it the best you can, trying to keep the businesses that are here happy and trying to attract more businesses. Is there a mechanism in place for you, because you're out there, to report back to maybe general managers, a city manager, or to council with? I don't recall ever getting recommendations from you. This is what I'm hearing. Mm-hmm. This is what you should be looking at, or something like that. Do you feel there's a need for that, or is that part of your role?
Through the chair to Councilor O'Neill, we are doing that on a regular basis. Essentially, what we're doing is we take the feedback that we gather and we'll go directly to the division or department that has the policy that has some suggestions for. An example would be the business license bylaw, when we got feedback from the business community on that. Zoning questions, and we came up with a solution, and we mentioned in the report, which I thought was a minor thing but a major thing, and that was we were getting a lot of calls for zoning inquiries. Does my VQA store fit in this particular zone? Right, and so I'm not a zoning expert, so we'd have to refer them on to planning, and so what we came up with was we developed an online version that's a private web link we can send out. Someone can fill in all the major questions that planning would ask, and then we could send it to them, and planning could assess it and send it back immediately. So that's kind of an example of where we're taking that feedback. Most of the feedback we get is we are bringing back to the appropriate areas, and there's quite a bit of positive policy adjustment or work. So we haven't had those major like we're bringing back feedback that's relating to the industrial zoning bylaw that we're working on, right? So we are trying to bring that where we can. I would say there hasn't been very many at all that I can recall that would say, hey, this is something that we need to take to council. It's more at a staff level.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Councilor Reid.
Thank you. Well, I feel like a proud mama bear here. I think this is the first time in the history of this city that we've had such great results from our economic development department. You've done a great job, and it's wonderful to have a tourism manager on board. I think this is wonderful. David, kudos to you for getting Hello BC. I know that was a lot of work, and I think it's going to pay back in spades. I think with the growth that we have, it's been an advantageous time for us to have someone who's so gung-ho in economic development, because with SkyTrain actually having arrived, and in the commercial world, you now know there's actually realtors who realize where Coquitlam is, that it actually exists, and that it's very close to the downtown core, and that there is lots that we have to offer. I think also what's been built up in the economic development department from my perspective as a councillor is the great liaison that we have now with corporate communications and with Parks and Leisure. And I thank both of those managers for all that they're doing, because with a team, I mean, we can really move forward. As you know, with the Celebrate Coquitlam Committee, which is sort of the beginning of how we were trying to wrestle with how we do events and everything else, and the culmination of it became that, wow, maybe we need a tourism manager, and wow, now we've got one, and we can move forward. I think that's really a big deal for us. It probably won't look at that from the outside. We're sort of like a bunch of ducks. We look calm and lovely on the top, and our little feet are really paddling underneath. I know that I mentioned to council that our film business, our filming business, of course, will be moving forward into your neck of the woods with tourism and economic development as corporate sponsorships. So again, for the first time in this city's history, I think we're actually paying an incredible amount of time to opportunities that have always been on the table, but we haven't sort of picked them up and ran with them, and now we're running. And I think that's so very important for us. And I want to thank you for all the work you've done. And remember, we have to leave. I have to leave. I'm not allowed to come up with any harebrained schemes till September, David says. So I promise I won't come up with any harebrained schemes till September. So we'll all leave the tourism manager alone for a while, and I expect wonderful things. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's no pressure. Yeah.
I was next, and I will say that I suspect that Councillor Reid will continue to come up with harebrained schemes, but she's just not allowed to tell you any of them.
Okay, make a list.
Trust me, don't ever offer that one.
Don't make a list.
Similarly, on the Hello BC, congratulations. I know how much work that goes into that. I had a similar bit of experience, success actually, managing to get Mark Madriga to put Coquitlam on the map of the weather forecast on the morning newscast with Steve Darling. It took me months, though. Yours was much more significant for the long-term health of Coquitlam, though. The office space in the city centre, we're trying to capitalize on SkyTrain. SkyTrain needs both residential density but office density. How do we move forward now with a real vision for getting those jobs at the city centre, in our city centre as well? I know, for example, we did a rezoning for John Piercy in a sort of industrial site, but an office building in an industrial site off Schoolhouse about 3 years ago. He's now moved back into the city centre, thankfully, and some of us were at his opening a couple of nights ago. An accountant, John Piercy, Jim Piercy, sorry, yeah, Jim Piercy, the accountant. How do we get that critical mass of office space, and how do we get the next building built? Actually, the purpose-built, not just the ancillary office space that comes with the residential tower.
Through the chair, I think that's a good question. I think one of the things that we can do is, working with Mr. McIntyre's department and trying to, I think the industrial zoning consolidation project helps in a certain extent because there's some flexibilities that we can, if you look at a technology company, there's some flexibilities that we can include into our new industrial zones that would help, in their industrial areas. With the city center, it's a different market, and I think one of the things that Mr. McIntyre, myself, and Perry Stenicia, our lands manager, we've sat down and talked about a few things there because I think particularly Perry's got a lot of connections within the real estate community, and I think we've already talked about being more proactive and doing some joint presentations where we utilize those contacts and go out and meet with the development community and say, hey, what can we do to help you? It's challenging because the big thing is how do we get that major client that's going to take up a significant amount of office space first, and that's the challenge. And the market, to be honest, right now doesn't really view Coquitlam as an office space destination. So that's why we've been trying to do stuff like the Office Space magazine, especially that goes out. We've done a feature in that. We've done an advertisement in that, trying to generate at least some interest. So I think all we can try to do is be more proactive, and you know, there's a role there for council as well, right? When council has those meetings with some of those developers, we need to plant that seed as well. That says you have to look for Coquitlam and encourage them to get going with their office development, and we'll help you. Conceivably, maybe in the event of a major office looking to relocate, it's going to take, you know, it's going to be a sales level at the staff level, but also at the political level, right? We're going to have to say, hey, we want you here, we want your business here, da, 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 da. So all we can kind of do is, you know, I think we're putting the policy in place, you know, like the transit-oriented development strategy, all these types of things to get in place so that when it happens, when the market returns, that we're ready to do it. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it does to some degree, because obviously it is about connecting that big anchor to the ship. And when someone's going to build something or is contemplating building something, or when someone has in their project an office component, getting that built requires us to perhaps even be the connection to the big anchor. Jim. I did that twice now with Jim and John.
I just have a few comments to something that David said. Well, firstly, there is really good collaboration between economic development and planning staff at various levels. And this is one area where we do get our heads together and plot and scheme about how can we land the big fish, you know, get some additional office space into the city. Certainly the industrial zoning update, David's been very equal to that. Prospect comes by. I'm actually working on one right now. It's kind of confidential, but we're working on something very closely with economic development. So that's really encouraging to see. In terms of, I think, where we're at right now and office development, this is not unique. This challenge isn't unique. It's the same thing on a smaller scale. I hear about it from the other planning directors across the lower mainland. And what we're seeing right now, for the most part, is David pointed to the office space at Ani. Part of their zoning, part and parcel with that, they have to give a certain amount of commercial. That tends to go into the code. So you see that stuff in the 2 to 3 story. And it's not really the A+ rental space, so we're not getting the top end clients in there or tenants. At least it's something. What we're really focused on, and we do have these conversations, Jerry and David, consultants and the staff, is how can we attract that key anchor that's going to come into the EC assessment. School district, so something significant that's going to be leasing 20 to 30,000 square feet. So the developer, be it a BOZA or a Uninet or whoever, will then go to the bank, get money for a standalone office building, because at least they have that anchor line up. So we kicked around some ideas. We'll continue to do that. Certainly, if we can take that away from today's session, is something we need to focus on. With that, that's obviously the coming of SkyTrains and assistance with that. It's just getting the first couple going, just getting that critical mass, because this office space development tends to be a little bit needs that once you get something there, others tend to come. And in large part, it's because the services and amenities are in that area. I think from our city center is really evolving in a way that there are those amenities now, and there'll be more in the future. So I think it'll be easier in time to attract those standalone office uses. Our last plug will be, this is a major property in the city center. We can have some say time too, and how we want to scale up.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Jim. Through the chair, just one other comment that we're trying to add to our marketing materials. It may seem like a small thing, but we don't have a professional services sector fact sheet. We never have had one. So that's on our goal to do this year, because if we have that, then it's something that we can highlight. Also get some business testimonials. If you look in the city center, we have investor groups, regional office. We've got some office space on Glen Drive. So we've got to hit on some of those to be our advocates as well, right? And I think the other thing is to keep our eyes and ears open for example, the Trio building. We got a relocation of some ministry transportation jobs. So we've got to keep our, you know, we're trying to hear about it, and if we can all work together and we hear those things, and then we go and make the pitch, and maybe you know, the one thing we do have going for us is a lot of people commute from here to Vancouver for a lot of these government offices. And so maybe if the transit opens up, if they may be open to putting a division along the SkyTrain line, something on the Evergreen line. So I think, you know, there's the opportunities there. It's just a matter of kind of catching that first fish.
Okay. My last comment is I'm glad we've moved the film. Film has traditionally been in an area. Quite often find the success of a bureaucratic area is who it reports to, and if film reports to facilities or in that line, you end up with film trying to rent out our facilities rather than trying to bring in the economic development into all kinds of other facilities. So I this last winter, for example, at Riverview, there was a couple of days when there was 12 productions all happening that week, and Falling Skies, which is a major production, happened this autumn, and so the downfall of the Lower Mainland film industry that was predicted a year ago not only didn't happen in Coquitlam, but we went the other direction. So I want us to see us continue to bring that kind of dollar to Coquitlam. Councillor Zerillo.
So we just wanted to congratulate you as well on securing so many wins in the tourism place, and I think that's a wonderful portfolio that you now can send on. So it's quite meaty to send on, so that's wonderful. Gives you increased time to focus on economic development, and the one that popped out at me on your report was the expansion of local jobs. So I guess I'm not asking you to answer today, but I just did have obviously more questions came up after I read your report. So wanted to ask you specifically about relationship building with our MPs and our MLAs. I know you've done a wonderful job in the community. Your reach has been very expansive. Our community knows you well. Are you getting any support from our MPs and our local MLAs in regards to relationship building or introductions outside of our community?
Through the Chair of the Council, yes, we are. I think it helps that two of our former councillors have become MLAs, and I think that's been, to be honest, I think that was instrumental in helping us get the Hello BC website thing sorted out. So, but yes, I think it is fairly good, but I could spend some more time, and especially on the MP level. So we'll be happy to do that as well. Build up some more relationships there, and hopefully help generate some more jobs and
because it's interesting that our industry minister is in our riding, and we do have one of the greatest fiber optic infrastructures in the country. And has he ever had the opportunity to explore that, or has he seen it?
No, not yet. Not from me. He may have previously, but definitely not for lack of trying. It's difficult to nail down Mr. Moore, but we'll definitely keep trying on that. It's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Okay. The other things that came into my mind, just how do we capitalize, because you had quite a few interesting facts there, and like I said, I don't need an answer today, but the ones that popped out, and how do we capitalize on, you said that there are an unprecedented, recently, relocation of businesses into Vancouver. Can we identify what those businesses are and find out? Maybe we could have some of them here if we know what they are. Mm-hmm. There's a shortage of industrial in YVR. How can we capitalize that in Coquitlam? You had a note there about smaller spaces, fairly strong. Mm-hmm. Can we understand what's the sweet spot of those smaller spaces? So maybe we could be marketing that. You also mentioned the warehousing opportunities, and I think this group knows I'm not that keen on warehousing because it's a lot of space, not as many jobs. But if you said there was a shortage of warehousing space, so can we explore that? And then the other thing was you mentioned about the data storage, and again, this goes back to QNet, but it's really nice to see that we have two data partners here, because I think once the data story starts to infiltrate the larger community, we have some real opportunities there. And lastly, I just wanted to mention, let's not forget about Coquitlam for office space. We're going to have a lot of residential there. It would be nice to have some office space too, so that people don't have to come all the way in. But thank you very much, and I'll be looking forward to what's coming up.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll just make clear that I know that many of us have been in discussion with Minister Moore over the years sure. about QNet and about he's well aware of it, and I don't think he's seen the storage. Mind you, we hadn't seen it either until 2 weeks ago. So, Councillor Wilson.
The industrial vacancy rate dropped dramatically from 2011 till now. Any ideas what it was before all the Port Mann disruption?
I would, through the chair to Councillor Wilson, it would probably be around that. I'm guessing here, but probably around the 4.5% mark.
We're kind of where we were before.
Yeah, all that kind of return. If you look at the Metro Vancouver industrial vacancy is typically around 3.5%, and we've been a little bit higher just because of the suburban market. Typically be a little higher. So.
When we're talking about trying to attract offices and office buildings, we talked about tax incentives in the past.
Through the chair to Councillor Wilson, that's a challenging one because the community charter prevents us from kind of helping one business over another, so we have to be careful with that one. But we haven't looked at per se, but we've done some. The revitalization bylaw is kind of how we can do some stuff, like we did it in Mayardville, the commercial revitalization bylaw. Other communities have done, I know they've done industrial and commercial revitalization for other areas, particularly in the eastern Fraser Valley, to try to generate more interest in their industrial lands, particularly after the downturn. So, I mean, if that's a direction that council would like us to examine, we'd be happy to look at it. But that's pretty much only, that's in my experience, that's the only the revitalization kind of bylaws, the really only kind of tax incentive that we can really do without violating the community charter.
I didn't realize that. Yeah. And then the only other thing was in reading the report, I didn't get a really strong sense of how business has improved in Coquitlam, but in reading the bylaw report, I got a much better idea through the new business licenses and that sort of thing. And I'm just kind of thinking that might be something that should be in your report as well as just coincidentally that they're being done at the same time today. But, you know, a 50% increase in new business licenses to me is great news. And it, you know, probably would be good in your report too. Then.
Good comment. Thank you. I'll take that back.
Excellent. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else?
Wonderful.
Motion to receive would be in order.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. Carried unanimously.
Thank you.
I've got a great idea. I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Chair burn.
Thank you.
Oh, I want the one in the middle.
Item 4 is a report on the Bylaws, business licensing, and animal services year-end report 2013. We have introductory comments by our deputy city manager and a presentation by our manager of legal and bylaw enforcement.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, as noted, it's our annual report. It's before committee today, and I'd like to acknowledge Heather and Andrea and the staff that work in the area for their good work over the past year. We consider 2013 to have been another successful year for the area. And while this is an area that does have an enforcement role, and sometimes we're kind of focused on the negative, I would just like to highlight that we do also focus on public education and compliance-focused strategies, so that it's not always our first choice or first action to slap somebody with a ticket. So we do try to walk that balance as best we can. That's sometimes a difficult area to manage. Heather has a PowerPoint presentation that she's going to run through, and then we'll be pleased to answer any questions that council may have.
Blue?
After.
Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As the Deputy City Manager noted, we're here to do our annual update on the activities of bylaw enforcement and the animal shelter over 2013. So just starting now right into the animal shelter, as Council's aware, the shelter has been operating. Oh, sorry, we'll just do a quick overview. The highlights for this year were that we had some increased parking revenue. This is largely consequent to the city having taken over for the full year in 2013 operation of enforcement activities in the town center area. Council will recall that MPark did previously undertook those activities, and we took it over in September of 2012. We are continuing to focus on our administrative improvement, public education, and as the Deputy City Manager noted, we focus primarily, particularly outside of parking and tickets, with obtaining compliance before we take enforcement, which requires quite a lot of activity on behalf of property use inspectors and bylaw enforcement officers as they work with the public to educate them about the particular infractions that they might observe and encourage them to bring their properties or whatever situation they might be facing into compliance with the city's bylaws before taking the heavy-handed enforcement action. Of course, that is eventually sometimes required, but in most cases we have very good success. Our bylaw enforcement staff have also been doing proactive patrols through the city as directed by council, focusing primarily on parking, signs, off-leash dogs, school zone patrols, and of course commercial vehicle issues and construction-related concerns in the northeast sector, which have been particularly a significant focus for the city, particularly over the last 1.5 to 2 years. So just now turning to the animal shelter. As council is aware, the animal shelter has been operating as a civic institution since 2002, and the focus currently is on receiving stray animals and caring for them temporarily, with the objective, of course, always of returning them to their owners. If no owners are forthcoming, the shelter's focus and the shelter staff attendants focus to finding new owners for them, and we also, in the course of that, undertake significant public education around responsible pet ownership, including things like microchipping and lost and found databases and registration to ensure that if animals are lost in the municipality, they can quickly be returned to their owners. So in 2013, we were up in the number of animals that were brought into the shelter from 637 in 2012. And on its own, it's difficult to explain, but there is we've actually been importing a number of animals from other municipal shelters because we have had quite a low number, particularly cats. We've had a low number, and it's always good to take adoptable animals from other municipalities that aren't having similar successes and that are struggling to keep up with their numbers. So just in terms of the number of animals returned to their owners, 87% of dogs went back, which is up from 86% in 2012 marginally, but we have seen a significant increase over the past few years, which we attribute largely to the strong licensing campaigns that the city's been undertaking. The number of cats reunited, it remains a challenge, and that, of course, is because we don't have the same licensing requirements for cats, and cats are a little bit different in some people's perspective from dogs, and they're also
Not nearly as lovable. Yes, I know that.
It depends where you stand on that.
The paper for the cat lovers.
Janice, could you write that down?
The cat lovers.
So again, we have seen a number of...
For felines?
God.
We are still continuing to take registrations of cats, and we encourage staff and the public to register their cats with the city's registration database, and that has continued to be successful. The number of cats, again, has increased, and of course that was because we took some in. There were also a number of feral cats, communities that we responded to sort of on a bylaw enforcement side of things as well, because they were causing problems in the community. When feral cats come into the shelter, they are a significant challenge for animal care attendants because they are special needs cats. They aren't like your typical household, even if they're indoor-outdoor cats. They do require significant attention, and they do tend to stay longer and be less adoptable than some of the other cats that we've seen. However, overall, we've had a very successful year in terms of adoptions, and there are only 29, or as of the time that this was prepared, there were only 29 animals available for adoption, which is quite a low number given where we've been in the past. So you can just see the comparisons of the number of cats, dogs. We're down a little bit in dogs. We're up a little bit in cats. We're half in birds, which is completely inexplicable.
How many cats are you missing? Yeah.
Have something to do with the cats.
We had 9 rabbits, and which is up from 7, and then 7 others, which are, of course, guinea pigs, ferrets, and the like. So just moving on to the animal-related complaints, the vast majority come from dogs at large. And overall, and I'd just like to take a moment to correct some information that is found on page 3 concerning the numbers, but there weren't significant variations between 2012 and 2013, but down at the bottom it speaks of there were no significant variations between the numbers of complaints received each year. So the most notable was an increase in the number of dogs at large from 263 in 2012 to 280 in 2013. That's actually reversed. It should be a decrease, not an increase. There was also, it notes a decrease in the number of injured animals from 19 to 4, but in fact it's the reverse. Those are marginal variations, and there really is no explanation other than just year to year, that's how things tend to happen. So,
Anyone know? Go ahead.
Thanks. Just on the previous slide, other is a really large number. Can you be a little more specific? So we have dogs at large, 263, dead animals, 197, and other, 180.
That includes things like picking up of supplies at pet stores, picking up medications at vets.
These are animal-related
sorry.
complaints,
I'm sorry.
not trips.
They're probably about cats, though, I would think.
Well, they're the most annoying. Yeah.
Dogs peeing on your lawn and all that
that's
stuff.
likely that's
Oh,
the nature of them. That's correct. So it's a bit, we can give council a better
Defy
breakdown of that.
classification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the dog off-leash in a non-off-leash area isn't that large, it's a complaint other.
A dog off-leash in a non-dog off-leash area would be a dog at large.
Even though the owner's there.
That's correct.
Yeah, well, he's too stupid to put him on leash.
Good try.
Yeah, I was trying to figure it out. That's a big number, you're right.
Just moving on to the 2013 general bylaw complaints, we received 2,686 non-animal related bylaw complaints in 2013. This is an
People are
increase.
worse than animals.
Sorry?
People are worse than animals.
Worse than cats.
This is increased from 2,535 in 2012. Again, it's difficult over the years to predict how the variations, what the implications of the variations are, and there aren't any significant variations. Again, the widest variation from 2012 to 2013 is in the other categories where complaints increased from 286 to 408. Again, it's difficult unless we broke it down into very small subcategories to identify what that would be. The only other notable one was, of course, the unsightly premises category, where the number of complaints was down in 2013 from 431 in 2012. It was 382 in 2013. And in the zoning category, there was an increase from 77 to 123. Just looking now at the ticketing summary for 2013, there was a significant increase in the number of bylaw enforcement tickets that were issued by the municipality, 14,489 compared to the 9,554 issued in 2012. This increase is largely attributable to the enforcement in the town center area, parking. So they're quite small dollar value tickets, but they are a significant increase. There is a significant increase in the number of them. So the revenue total in 2013 from Ben tickets increased from 295,711,000 to 335,948 in 2015. So I don't know. Can you just go back? So I don't know if there are any questions, but you will. This, just for council's information, this chart, of course, does not include the street and traffic tickets because they would be off the charts compared to, and make the comparison very difficult. So we've only included all of the other ones except for the street and traffic tickets, which of course are the vast majority of them. Just before moving on to this, I just wanted to note for council that in 2013, only 10% of the tickets that the municipality issued were actually disputed. And of course, council is aware that we continue to use the bylaw enforcement adjudication process, which has been unbelievably successful for Coquitlam. Of course, we don't have to prosecute our tickets through the provincial court system, which has significantly expedited the processing of disputes, which is good for the city, it's good for the public, and so overall, it's considerably less costly. Of that 10%, only approximately 1% or 10% of those actually proceeded to adjudication. That's because in the pre-screening process, process, a number of those issues will be resolved, either because there's misinformation between from the person who's received the ticket about what the ticket was for, the nature of the municipality's evidence, or the screening officer has reviewed the information that's been available or made available by the officer that issued the ticket and has concluded that perhaps in this case the ticket wasn't necessary. Either we hadn't sought as much compliance as perhaps we ordinarily would, or the evidence wasn't as clear as it was. So in those cases, again, it's only a very small fraction that actually ever get to adjudication overall. So just looking a little bit at business licenses. So in 2013, the business licenses issued a total of 6,263. This is an increase of approximately 5.5% from those in 2012. 1,342 of those were recorded as new applications rather than annual renewals, representing a 15% increase over annual renewals over those issued in 2012. And again, a lot of those are going to be the trades licenses that we've talked about significantly in the work of the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Officer up in the Northeast sector and his work in terms of ensuring that trades are licensed in the municipality. So there was also, as Council will note, there was an increase in the revenue from 2012. 2011 and 2012 were pretty consistent. There is an increase in 2013. Again, that is attributable to the trades licenses, but also we had been accounting for pending applications and business licensing in a certain way, and we've changed our process around that to streamline it, which resulted in a one-time revenue realization that won't continue on year to year, and we expect in 2014 that the numbers will return to those fairly consistent with 2012, of course depending on what happens with the adoption of the new business license bylaw and the fee structure associated with that. So I just wanted to look back on a few things that has happened this year. We have undertaken a program with Petland, as Council's aware, where we have been sending some of our adoptable animals to Petland store in Port Coquitlam. They have been successfully adopting them out fairly quickly, and 52 animals went through Petland from our shelter last year. We've been taking on the parking enforcement in town centre area, which has, Council's aware, resulted in some additional revenue generation and additional tickets being issued. That seems to be going well, and we anticipate, however, over time, that as there becomes better education around the town centre area and the parking restrictions, that revenue may go down. We've also undertaken in the past year, Council will recall that they approved the implementation of a position for commercial vehicle enforcement, and that commercial vehicle enforcement officer has been working primarily in the Northeast sector with the trades and the developers and with commercial vehicle operators to deal with noise issues, tarping issues, overweight vehicles, and has been successful in bringing many of those, the larger concerns around commercial vehicles operating in Coquitlam under control. And we feel as though they have contributed significantly in terms of the work that they do with the RCMP in terms of managing commercial vehicles in Coquitlam. As Council is also aware, in 2013 we introduced the intermunicipal business license with Port Moody and Port Coquitlam. 57 of those licenses were sold through Coquitlam, and we're anticipating that number will increase as the information becomes more readily available and the number of people interested in taking the intermunicipal business license will increases. We also introduced the street and special event vending bylaw in 2012 and made those licenses available. We are going to be looking at ways, so these include farmers markets, trucks, as well as the pulled pork sandwiches and Juicy Green and the other mobile vendors that have been operating in certain areas in the town center area, and there's one license also issued in Millardville. We're going to be looking at ways to make that program more flexible, to allow additional vendors and to allow some additional flexibility around where those vendors are located, and we'll be reporting back to Council in the spring or summertime about those potentials for that program. Council is also aware that we're currently in the process of doing the business license review. This has been an ongoing project for our division. over the past year and a half, and there's been lots of work going in. We have had first 3 readings of the proposed revised business licensing bylaw, and then staff went out and conducted some public consultation in the fall. We have the results of that, and we'll be reporting back to council shortly on the findings and seeking forth and final reading for that bylaw with the hope that it will be implemented this year. And finally, as council may also be aware, we're looking at establishing a process and implementing a short-term trial basis policy for accepting owner-surrendered animals in the shelter. Historically, our shelter has only accepted stray animals, and those owners seeking to surrender their animals have been redirected to other resources in the municipality. When the shelter started out, staff and council and the city weren't quite sure how it was going to work and how our kennels were going to do and whether we would have capacity to take owner surrenders. We found over time, as the number of animals has decreased and our return rate has improved for dogs and cats, that we're in a position where we have excess capacity and we should be considering taking owner surrendered animals. So we've developed a policy and specific provisions around which animals we will take, and so we're going to try it out for a while and hope for the best, that we're able to provide an additional service to Coquitlam residents in terms of owner-surrendered animals, and that will have a positive impact on the number of strays that we see in the municipality as well. So I think that concludes our presentation. Not sure if council has any questions, but certainly.
Councilor Support.
Okay, on your cats, I noticed that you have about 308 that are turned in, and very, very few are, only 18% are returned. What happens to the other 200 some odd cats?
Through the chair, those cats are adopted out to through our adoption process to people who want new cats. Mm-hmm. That's primarily where they go. There are some cats, feral cats, that remain in the shelter, and we look after them until they're rehabilitated, or we have another option in terms of rescue organizations. But
okay, now what's the difference between home business and one on the street, the bylaws governing signs and a few other things? How are they varied?
Sorry, could you just clarify your question for me?
Yeah, in other words, as you can drive down the street, you see businesses have their neon sign, of course, and they got the sandwich boards. Home business, he puts up a sandwich board in his yard, he gets tickets.
The requirements around signage, or the restrictions around signage, are all set out in the sign bylaw.
Well, I think, Mayor, we should need to revisit this, because I can tell you something. The guy at Blue Mountain in Austin, the watch repair guy, very, very good. He has a little sign the other day, the size of this. Batteries, $5 on his fence. Professionally painted and everything else. Be damned if he doesn't get the tickets. He's got $750 worth of tickets. The guy at Blue Mountain in Austin. Blue Mountain and Rochester. On tickets. He has a sign on his doorstep, gets tickets. It just looks like he believes that there's discrimination because of a different nationality. He's from other country. He thinks that it's discrimination against him personally. And also, I think there's a better way of settling these $750 worth of tickets than just issuing him a ticket rather than issuing some warning tickets. I don't think he's got one warning ticket, but he got a lot of other tickets. So that means only one thing, Mayor, that either we're picking on him, or there's some discrimination, or there's a combination of a whole lot of things. And I think if those bylaws are wrong, and we encourage home businesses, and the other businesses can have the neon signs, which I believe, they have sandwich boards. I have no difficulty with it at all. This guy can't put a sandwich board out. He can't put up anything in his yard, otherwise he'll be ticketed. How does he advertise his home business? How does he advertise home business? He's got 700. He phoned me yesterday, and he phoned me again this morning. I talked to Mr. Duma this morning about it. $750 worth of tickets.
He should probably. Okay.
Now, how realistic is that?
Does he keep putting the sign out?
No, he had one sign on. It's disappeared. The sign has disappeared on his fence, but he had it there. A small little. I noticed a sign on his fence.
Sign up.
When you drive by, you noticed it. All of a sudden, he gets tickets for it. So,
Okay,
you know,
Mr.
I mean,
Dumont.
we can bring him in and
Have we
have
told
him
him yet
discuss
that
it
the
with
reason
us.
he's getting tickets is because he's not allowed to do that?
Thank you through the chair. I haven't had Councillor Sakara did phone me and I followed up with Andrea. We haven't had a chance to look into the specific details today, but we are looking into it and we'll get a note out to all of council in terms of what's transpired there and what the history is with the property and the signage.
But that's not only the answer, Mayor. The answer is how we're going to have some home business be able to advertise somewhere. I mean, how?
Well,
how
they're allowed to
they
advertise.
attract people to their homes as a home-based business.
What are the? Well, you're allowed to advertise. So I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities to advertise.
I
think
don't know where.
the newspaper's over there standing
Oh,
saying,
well,
you know,
yeah,
I think there's other
a
opportunities to
newspaper
advertise.
advertising one,
But
yeah.
what are the signage requirements for home-based businesses of that retail sort of a? What are the requirements for home-based businesses of that? People must drop in customers sort of thing.
Andrea may be able to answer this with some greater specificity, but my understanding is you're entitled to have one sign in the window or sort of
And
freestanding.
there's size limitations on that one sign.
And I've seen that sign in his window.
Or it's I think freestanding on your outside, you can have one sign within a specific size.
Okay.
It's clearly laid out in the home occupation of the bylaw, the size and, you know, where that sign can be.
And of course, he'll advertise, you know, that he's in that kind of business. But if he wants to put up another sign that is batteries for $5, even this size, he gets a whole lot of tickets. I mean, where's this common sense? All I'm saying that, you know, there's something wrong. There's definitely something wrong with the way we treat home businesses. And I think that you need to resolve this gentleman $750 worth of tickets, some way, somehow. Because I can tell you something right now, we don't, he'll take us to court on discrimination alone and win. Pardon?
Yeah. There's been a request that that element of it be closed. There are some closed, or potentially in-camera aspects of that, but there's some others that weren't. I believe that he has run afoul of the bylaw we all voted on. When we passed the home-based business bylaw, Councillor Hodge wasn't there at the time, but he was on the other side of the table.
And you know what? I understand, Mayor, that he probably violated the bylaw. But are we saying that our bylaw is so good that it's the best for all folks? The same protection as a business on the street as a home-based business.
But staff here didn't write that bylaw. Council passed the bylaw.
I know that.
And
I'm
staff
talking
are
about
enforcing it.
That's why I'm bringing it up here.
Okay.
I think there's something wrong with our bylaws. We need to amend those bylaws to make it a little, you know, towards compatible. If I'm on the street doing business and I have a neon sign plus a sandwich board, and then I have a home business, I can have one little sign in the window. I mean, there's something wrong. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, Councillor O'Neill.
Oh, thanks.
It'll be me, it'll be Councillor Zurillo and Councillor Hodge.
So much stuff here. And I'm actually thinking about how different levels of government, and this is really the close-to-home level of government that all of these issues. Now, page 7, pay parking, commercial vehicle enforcement, the net zero position that was created. And indeed, it's more than paid for itself, generating positive revenue of $41,000 above the cost of creating that position. It's not anticipated, though, that the outcome will continue. So what happens if the outcome starts slipping quite a bit below the cost? This was created as a net zero. Are we going to get an immediate report back? Do we have to wait to an annual report to find out that something has been costing us money when we didn't think it was going to cost us money?
Through the chair, staff monitor the revenues that are coming in, and we will adjust accordingly based on in terms of hours that are assigned, because a lot of those are flexible auxiliary hours, deliberately so that we can keep track of what revenues are coming in and make adjustments on the labor side if necessary.
Oh, I didn't think that was I thought we created some of these net zeros with full-time staff.
The commercial vehicle enforcement officer is.
Yes.
But the parking side of it.
So this was a commercial vehicle enforcement officer is the one that is generating positive revenue of $41,000. So what happens if, after learning all the lessons, that the commercial vehicle operators start obeying all the bylaws, and all of a sudden we've got this person who's not net zero anymore?
Just for clarity, the section in that through the management of the parking hours and the commercial vehicle enforcement, that's actually cumulatively they created a revenue generation of $41,000. It's not just the commercial vehicle enforcement officer, but it's the same logic. I mean, we're continuing to watch, and we're continuing to see that there's a growing discrepancy between the trades licensing isn't generating as much revenue, and the ticketing of the commercial vehicle enforcement officer. We'll revisit that certainly.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question.
And just as a reminder to council on that position was temporary full-time last year, and we've made it temporary full-time this year as well, and we will evaluate at the end of the year, but so far it's worked out well. And as Heather said, we continually look at the revenue versus our costs, because council has approved a number of net zero staff in that area, so we watch it closely to make sure that we come in on our budget for council.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm next. And I had that issue. I wanted to figure out how those two. So one of them loses money, and one of them makes more than 41,000 effectively. And I suspect it's the commercial vehicles that is more costly to operate compared to the revenue. Yeah, okay. First off, I wanted to say though, I love cats. Absolutely love cats.
I saw the headline already written.
Where is she? Oh, she's back. Oh, she's back. I love cats.
Let the record show.
I want to make it clear that I love cats. I'm not sure I like the cat that keeps eyeing my rabbit, but, and not amorously. I mean, they're looking.
Bring the rabbit to our place. I've got a cat.
I've got photos of you cuddling the rabbit too. Yeah, pretty. Okay. Reduce. I note the parking tickets here, and I Councillor O'Neill actually went down the path that I was wanting to go. I think council wants us to reduce our revenue from tickets. I want more enforcement, or enforcement to be less necessary, more compliance. And I really hope that there's someday when the commercial vehicles actually stop being ticketed, because they all wake up. But I really don't think that will happen either. But I look forward to the day when we see greater compliance and greater understanding. And one of the issues with the understanding is I have used that parking machine, the vending machine, and I'm not sure what valid is supposed to mean. It's a button. It says you push valid. If you want yes, you push valid. If you and I don't know why, and I've raised the question a couple of times, that I want it to be really user-friendly. I want the users to get the idea that this is really smooth and easy to do.
Especially new Canadians, new citizens wouldn't know what that
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I'm staring at it and it tells me put in the amount of time you want and then press valid. And then
What word are you saying? Valid?
Valid.
Valid.
V-A-L-I-D.
Okay, like validate or something.
Or something, and so I don't know whether other communities. I've seen this similar machine in Westminster that that didn't work either. Well, that one actually didn't work. Period. Ours at least always worked when I tried them.
Always takes you a minute.
It always takes the card, and that aspect of it, the payment is relatively simple. And so I would like to see us make sure we head toward compliance and be a little bit more forgiving on the ticket side, if possible, except for the delivery drivers that keep parking in the handicap spots. And Canada Post is one of the worst.
Can't offend them, they're taking our mail anyhow.
Don't worry about it, they won't be coming around.
Now, and I wanted to explain, I wanted a better explanation for the taking dogs from other shelters, because the way you, there was a frown of disbelief on a member of the audience's face, who's probably going to write an article about it, related to the taking the animals from other shelters because we don't have enough animals, and therefore we can justify our existence as an animal shelter by getting more animals. And that wasn't what you were saying at all. You were saying we have capacity because we have more residents wanting animals, and we should be taking unwanted animals from other communities and making them available to our residents. And
I
so,
would like to speak on that when they're finished.
and so I'm looking for some way of making sure that that message gets there, and otherwise, on the off-leash dogs, how do we clamp down gently make sure they understand? I know Councillor Reid may skip the first step or advocate skipping the first step, but I see so many off-leash dogs, and we continually hear of a case where the on-leash dog gets attacked by the off-leash dog, or where a resident who isn't particularly enamored by dogs is embraced by an off-leash dog in a non-off-leash time at Mundy Park or in an area like Glen Park. We've spent a lot of money on an off-leash area, and every day I'll go by there and see off-leash dogs on the main field. And it takes away the main field from a lot of our residents who aren't particularly pleased with it. And I raised it before. I think Councillor Reid will raise it. I'm going to put her down here even if she doesn't want to speak. Mariner trucks, the truck routes stuff. We actually had a delegation stand there and say, how come we got a ticket for doing something that we knew was against the law? And so how do we, are we enforcing the kind of non-truck route issues firmly, or not very aggressively yet, or what?
Through the chair, sorry, your mayor, do you mean in terms of, are we enforcing the off-truck routes?
Oh, so a truck, for example, is heading to Coquitlam with a pup trailer, both loaded, going up Mariner. Mariner's not a truck route for that, I gather, or are they?
That is correct. It is not a truck route for that, because that would not be the closest area. If you're going to Coquitlam, you have to stay on the truck route for as long as you can before you take a local road. If you're delivering to somewhere in the Mariner area, then
Absolutely.
Of course it would be.
No.
But yes, our commercial vehicle enforcement officer continues to monitor those routes and to respond to complaints around those trucks being off route, and will immediately dispatch and try to identify who's in violation and whether or not they are in violation, because again, of course, they could be delivering locally to that area. But it is certainly one of the areas. Truck routes and off-truck routes on Mariner is a large and live issue for the commercial vehicle enforcement officer.
Particularly with Mariner, on the steepest side of Mariner, there's some very serious risks to our community, and we've seen trucks go through places. And congratulations on the Petland success. I think that's where we have to go, get away from puppy mills in pet stores and get moved toward the large number of pets that are out there needing good homes, and wonderful pets needing good homes, many of which are cats. Okay, Councillor Zerillo.
Thank you. I'm looking at page 4 on the general bylaw complaints. Over 50% of our complaints come from traffic, streets and traffic. And one of the things for sure I saw when I was door knocking, it was the number one thing people complain about is congestion and speed of traffic. So I see it's a 37% increase in total complaints. So is that correct?
Through the chair, it's 37.1% of total animal and non-animal related bylaw complaints in that given year. It's not an increase, it's a percentage of the total.
Because I thought the middle one was the increase. I thought the middle one was the percentage of the pie. Like 52% of all complaints come from street and traffic.
52% of all general bylaw complaints come from street and traffic.
Okay.
37.1 of general and animal related combined come from street and traffic.
So was there any increase then from 1409? Like what was our complaints last year? I'm asking just because we have such a large live 13,499 on the next page. So I'm just wondering what was our
the number last year was 1380.
So not a huge difference. Okay. Yeah, that's great. Because I guess my note to myself here was that perhaps this needs some extra attention so that we could put some additional solutions in place if it's 52%? To understand exactly what are those street and traffic violations, and is there something we could be doing as a council to help to reduce them, because that's your biggest chunk of time.
Through the chair, I think the fact that we've only gone up from 1380 to 1409, given the growth of the municipality, is actually quite positive. And that is one of the reasons why council has approved the commercial vehicle enforcement officers to address a number of those street and traffic complaints, the larger issue ones. Street and traffic will capture a number of things, including parking as well. So that's a large portion of it.
So you feel comfortable that we don't need to be doing anything else to help reduce this number?
I feel comfortable that we're doing what is necessary to make sure that number at least stays relatively close to what it is. And I think our officers do devote a lot of time to street and traffic issues.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And that's going to Councillor Hodge.
Yeah. I want to lose money on this because, it shows that we have compliance. It's one of those, when you look at the number and it looks huge, and everybody, people watching at home are going to think, oh, well, the city's doing this to make money, and we're not issuing tickets to make money. I want to see education and then compliance before ticketing, but it doesn't always work. And it's interesting that when you talk to residents, nobody likes tickets. When they get everybody's all had a parking ticket, yet we have residents that are saying they want more enforcement. So they want enforcement in their neighborhood, and they want enforcement on speed, which I know we're not talking about, but they want enforcement of parking tickets, or they want the neighbor's yard clean up. So residents are calling for enforcement, but at the same time nobody likes a ticket. So I appreciate the challenge that you have, and they want people parking too close to their driveways, and there's all these other issues. So I think that what I do want to know is that where we see a really high number of tickets, is there a reason for it? Is it not that, are we not getting the message out? Are we not doing proper education? I know that later on I'm going to raise an issue about parking in the town center, but I'm just wondering, is this indicative of that we're not getting the message out? Because really ticketing should be. I know that's one of the tools. When somebody doesn't get the message, then we have to ticket. And that's sort of part of the big stick approach when the soft approach doesn't work. And in some cases, does it mean that we need to review a bylaw? Is there something that's sort of saying, maybe that bylaw is wrong? Because my first thought is educate, but if there's non-compliance, why don't we have that compliance? Is it that an area is not properly marked, or is there other reasons for it? So I would want to make sure that when we see these spikes, that we are looking for, is it just an issue that the bylaw is wrong, or is there a reason that we don't have compliance, or is it just a case of people don't get it, we just have to keep hitting them with the stick? So I think that would be my question too.
Certainly, through the chair. It's interesting looking at the breakdown of street and traffic bylaw tickets in particular, but the vast majority of them sort of stem from, or from the parking tickets are simply failure to pay at the meter. And that's
an education.
a difficult one to further educate on. Other areas where we could do some work is parking in the parks where prohibited, but again, those are generally fairly well signed. We have heard that we could improve on the signage around the metering or the use of the metering and make them user-friendly, and perhaps that's something that could assist in that. And I agree, certainly we'd like our revenues in parking to decrease to the extent that it results in better compliance. I also think that there's a general learning curve in the town center area. There have been a lot of changes in terms of the parking regulation, and that in time that'll even out a little bit.
And on my other point, on the animal, I think capacity for animals is great. It shows that that's working. I think it's great that we're able to assist other areas, because not all of them have the same policy that we have about how long they will hold an animal for and make sure that animal is safely adopted. So I think that if we have the ability to do that, I think that's great. But it was interesting that you mentioned earlier about the surrendering of animals. I think that's an excellent program, but I would want to make sure that after adopting out of animals that we have recovered or found, that the placement of animals that our residents want to give up should be a priority. And I would be looking into that before I start accepting animals from outlying shelters. And I think that if we move into the area of accepting surrendered animals, that should be our, after looking after strays, surrendered animals, and then bring in animals from other areas.
through the chair, certainly the focus, now that we have approval for the owner surrender policy, we'll be looking at, making that a priority. We do, of course, want to continue to support those other animal shelters, and I think that there's a good balance to be had given the capacity that we have.
Me?
Well, let's talk about owner surrender just for a moment. So 12 years ago when we went down this pathway, we decided not to do it because you could get inundated with, a lot of animals. But it seems that the education, I think, part of the program that the animal shelter staff has done has been really good. And I think the fact that we're a no-kill shelter also is that was a big innovation 12 years ago. We became a no-kill shelter, and everyone was going, well, how can you do that? How can you do that? And I said, well, we have a plan, and that's where we're going to go. So the animals that have been destroyed over the years have been very few. Any of the controversial ones, I usually got calls starting at 7 in the morning from the animal rights groups, and in the end, I mean, we did everything we can for every animal. But swapping animals from shelter to shelter is a good thing in the long run, because when we first started years ago, like Chilliwack may have a whole bunch of little animals, and the people out in Chilliwack want big animals. They want farm animals. So if we had a whole bunch of big guys that nobody in the city wanted, we could swap big ones for little ones, and we could go from city to city, and we did that. And it's really been beneficial to the animals. And I think the other thing it did, personally, I went out to the Langleys when we moved. I went out to the Langleys, and they switched to a non-SPCA shelter. I went to Delta. They switched to a non-SPCA shelter. There were so many benefits that we could offer. And so the animal show that came on when Harley came, I got the girls, and we all got together with all the other shelters, and so now they even have their own little TV show, which we support, it's just great. There's been such education from all of these privately owned shelters that I think the general populace has really benefited from this, and I'm really proud of the programs we've done. The only thing I would like to see, I still want to talk about some of our tethering, and I think we can do that at another time. But I also do want to see, I do not think we cannot start ticket in the town center area, particularly Spirit Square. If we had a bylaw officer there at about 5:30 at night when they're all coming out and peeing all over our square and then going home and leaving all the poop and that there, that's disgusting. And Glen Park, I think we still have to do that, and maybe we just blitz it once a week or something for 4 hours, and the gossip goes, so the animal people will know. I still have the very first animal we ever got in the shelter in 2012. She still lives at my house. She's getting old, I think. She's, 12 now? 14? Yeah, 12, 14. So there's lots of people in our community also who don't want to adopt and be full-time parents forever. They foster, like I fostered her, and she stays for 10 or 12 years. But it's a good program. We have done an admirable job, and in the whole Lower Mainland, I'm very proud of us. Cats, too, and the dogs. And Terwiller, the rat. Do you remember him?
Councillor Cirillo.
Thank you for letting me speak again, because I just wanted to follow up on something that Councillor Hart said, and also something that Mayor Stewart said about, you said the number one, or one of the main things is not paying at the meter. And what are the barriers behind not paying at the meter? One of them is maybe they can't understand it. I know that I don't have change in my purse. I don't necessarily want to stick my Visa into the machine. Can we do something like the telephones like Impark has in downtown Vancouver? Like maybe we need to look at a more easy solution for residents of the city, not necessarily everybody, but residents of the city, to be able to use their phone in some capacity to pay for parking at the meter. Because it seems like you're saying not paying at meter is number one, and
through the chair, there is a capacity, actually, I understand, at the town center area to use your phone to pay for parking.
They just don't want to do it.
whatever the reason is, we can have a look at the meters, see if there's any way that we can make them a little bit more user-friendly and understandable to the public if there is a challenge around that, certainly.
I don't necessarily want a lot of money spent on it. I'm not in a position to be able to do that. But sometimes we just go back and we say to the people that got the ticket, why didn't you pay? Maybe we survey a few of them and find out if we can get to the root of the problem.
Yeah. The few that have written me have said I was only going in for a minute or something like that. So
I thought I did.
So I don't know that I didn't have change. I don't think it's that. But I suspect that in some circumstances, there's always free parking around the corners somewhere in the region, because it really is only a couple of streets that are metered, and so the pass that we offer for $18 doesn't apply to the meters, but it applies to the parking lots. That's $18 for a resident, based on the license plate of a registered vehicle licensed in Coquitlam. $18 a year from date of purchase. How wide? I don't think it's very widely known, though, is it?
I don't believe that they issue a tremendous number of those parking passes per year.
Yeah, maybe that's why you're whispering.
I don't. No, I don't. I'm not aware of exactly the numbers. I think it's administered through, and I believe it's under engineering that administers it. So I'm not in a position to say, but I believe the last time I checked, the number was fairly low.
Okay, and this isn't about enforcement. This is, so it probably is questions for engineering about the length of time for the parking. The Glen, for example, is 1 hour. I think we ought to be looking at maybe making it 2 hours, because there's always daytime space available now, and 2 hours would at least get, I get that complaint from the woman that cuts my hair that women can't get their hair done at her place because it takes longer than an hour to cut. They need more than an hour.
We have more hair.
Well,
I thought you were going to say it took more than
most
an hour.
men have
We
more
weren't
hair.
going to go there.
I had to.
But, so I think maybe we, and I know that engineering was doing an analysis of that, or at least going to contemplate that. But the goal is to get those parking spaces almost always full, almost always used, and lots of turnover and that sort of thing. And right now, I think we've got lots of turnover, but we haven't reached that optimum yet. So,
Well, just on the parking meters, I once a week I park by the pool on the street, and up until I got my counselor pass, I didn't. But it's a pain in the butt, and it's very, very slow, and you're standing in the dark, in the rain, and you're waiting for this, machine to process each step along the way. And maybe since we've installed them, is there some maybe upgrade to the software to try to, I don't know, because if you ask why people don't pay, from my standpoint, I'm sure some people would say it's really slow, and it takes me 40 seconds to pay for parking when I'm going to be, So I don't know if there's some way to speed it up.
yeah.
Thanks. You mentioned the parking pass you can stick on your windshield for $18 a year.
Yeah.
And what kind of uptake there was. I remember last year, Councillor O'Neill announced it in his best radio voice during the open council meeting.
That's right.
And sometime in the following week, I came in to get one for my wife, and there was a stack of application forms on the table out here. And I believe it was because of the sudden increase in demand. So if we tell them.
Well, if we tell them in the right voice.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
So Councillor O'Neill, perhaps you'd make that an on-table item tonight. Thank you.
There we go. Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Adjourn?
Second. We've got OBs. OBs, that's right.
The recommendation is that the report be received for information.
Move.
Second.
In favor, opposed, carried.
She said, Lonnie.
First other business item relates to public safety at city facilities, brought up by Councillor Hodge.
Yes, this is an item that came up for discussion at the recent Sports Council, and came up from one of the user groups. And I know that we had park staff was in the room, so they're aware that I'm going to ask this question, but I haven't had a chance to ask it yet. I just thought, in the interest, because it has come up at one of our meetings, and it came up in lieu of the tragedy that occurred in Surrey with the hockey mom outside of one of their facilities. and the steps that they took in Surrey to review safety around their leisure centers and where sports groups were gathering. Sometimes late evening, they're leaving after games, and I know this has been a concern, and I'm sure that our staff addresses this as an ongoing. But I'm just wondering that the public, if we can sort of say, if we've taken any measures, some areas where there may be vegetation or lighting, or what we've done in lieu of this to make sure that our citizens are safe at our facilities.
Mr. Alweda.
When the event occurred, we did immediately take a look at what was going on, and most of our facilities had some review undertaken in most of our facilities. Poirier has cameras, so we do have security measures in place. So there is an ongoing review on all the facilities, and many of them, the senior centers, they close, and so we do have that under control. There are other issues that are coming up around, for instance, Town Center North and some of the walking paths and some of it is created by the overlay work related to Evergreen. So we're constantly monitoring the different patterns of behavior around the Town Center. We have had that concern raised, and as part of the Town Center, we're doing some review in the Town Center Park. There's obviously the field replacement, the turf field replacement is going on, but we've got a couple other projects going on there, like the Evergreen, as well as the bleachers, and there's some work going on there that will make us look at a little bit more closely as people move to different parking areas, how the lighting in that area is facilitated, how access for the public, for the users of that park, as well as the rest of our facilities. So we are looking into it, and we can certainly report back. There is for Town Center, aside from the Poirier is well underway, under control, because it's the most modern facility. Other facilities we have to kind of monitor regularly. Town Center Park, we will have a report coming back to Council on just an ongoing review of the projects up in Town Center Park coming in the spring that will impact some of the upcoming events. So that will include the Town Center Park information session that's coming, I think, tomorrow. We're just informing the residents. And we are maintaining all the pathways, et cetera, but we will be updating Council on the ongoing projects this spring, including a review of safety issues coming out of the increased impact on Town Center Park from the construction of Evergreen and other projects.
Okay, and that was one of the areas that was specifically mentioned at the Sport Council, as you're aware, was the pathway coming down from the new north lot. Yep. It's kind of dark, it's through trees, yep. And I know that we're about to embark on a plan for doing that north field, and if that can somehow, as we're looking at that being included in that, how we maybe do some lighting, or hopefully, with more lighting in that area with the new field, but if some thought could be given to safety from that parking lot down, and we may hear that tomorrow from our residents as well.
We might. The new field turf replacement will include lighting for the field, as you know, and that will have pedestrian lighting as well that is cast on the pathways, but specific pedestrian trail lighting, we have to look at that as part of this. Make sure, because there are people walking further because of the availability of parking.
And we will want to use that parking lot more, and so I think exactly. That's one of the barriers is that, particularly in the evening, people don't feel safe parking up there and then coming down to the other fields.
Right. I know there's girls field hockey and others, and unescorted access is challenging in the dark, so we understand.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm actually glad you raised that. I immediately thought when I read the story, saw the story online of the challenges in Surrey and the tragedy in Surrey, of the issues that we had. I mean, we had community issues 35 years ago in our social rec center on Poirier, for example, including, I got assaulted while at work there, and others faced the same sorts of issues. And we were 3 or 4 years dealing with SEPTED and dealing with all kinds of additional police presence at the time to try to deal with the challenges that Surrey's now wrestling with, although theirs are perhaps even more acute, much more acute than ours were. So I think it's something you always got to keep your eyes on, make sure that we don't end up with a problem, because curing a problem after it takes root is much more complex than simply designing your facilities as Poirier now is designed. I think there's one corner of the library parking lot that I still have nervousness about, and really that's the only thing in that facility. The other side of the street actually is now be much safer. It just feels, you feel safer using it. So that's helpful. Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Sikora.
Yes, I'm just going to need your indulgence for a second here. It's a public safety issue. It's not directly related to this. And I just want to congratulate our engineering staff. I noticed walking in my neighborhood recently that a sidewalk was right beside a very steep embankment leading right into a stream, and it seemed to be very dangerous because that stream was a torrent at that moment. And I thought, oh my goodness, and it was quite close to a school as well. And so I alerted the engineering department and our solicitor as well. And the very next morning, there was yellow tape between the existing small fence and a tree, the tree that was nearby, to clearly mark that off as a dangerous place. And there apparently there's every intention now of taking action to make a permanent fence there and make it safe. And that was within 12 hours. So really impressed with the great work and public safety. So it's actually the second time in about a month and a half where there's been within 24 hours. There was another time in very recent, about a month and a half ago, a sign that for some reason was leaning over the roadway that trucks were. I witnessed a truck clipping the sign with its side mirror, and if the mirror had exploded or something and somebody was nearby, somebody would have been injured. And engineering was on it and fixed it within days. So public safety. So congratulations. Public acknowledgement.
Okay. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you. You know, safety is very, very important, but you know, I think what happened in Surrey is an isolated case. No question about it. It's a totally isolated case. Not to say it can't happen at any arena at any time. Doesn't matter how much lighting there is, or unless you got a security guard at each door, a policeman at each door, which ain't going to happen. So you know, I mean, I just don't think that we should be overreacting to where we're, you know, going to great deals of studies, spending tons of money for studies and a few other things because something happened in some other municipality. I'm sure that something will happen in another municipality. You'll say, how did it happen? Those things happen. Look at that young girl that got killed by this young guy in a park over Point Grey. You know, I mean, you know, it was a senseless kind of deal, but it happens. And you think it doesn't happen in other communities? Of course it will. You know, I mean, you know. There was a body found in Coquitlam Sunday night in an apartment, you know, or house. You know, I mean, what is the outcome of that? We don't know yet. But you know, things do happen, and I'll tell you what, you can have 100,000 lights in front of each house, and everything else will happen. So you know, I don't think we should react too much about it. You know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a note, because I worked in Surrey for many years, and Newton was my area. Was the manager of local area planning there, and we were working on the neighborhood plan in Newton, and it was you know, our consultants, our team was in there, and we knew there was a public safety issue in advance. I mean, part of it was, as the mayor is keenly noted, a lot of it is the design of that area. A ton of enclosed spaces, a dark park right in behind. There are lessons to be learned from that, and when we're designing parks today, it's not about a narrow access with a deep lot. It's really about publicly opening up these areas, and sometimes taking down some trees might have some issues, but it creates a very open space. So we are learning from that. It's not the neighborhood design, the way the parks are open, the way we design public spaces. It's all very, very important. And we couldn't fix Newton. We really couldn't fix the fact that these buildings and location of the park and behind, it was just a very, very difficult situation. So we're certainly learning from that experience.
Yeah, no question. And right here in City Center, we've done some great work on Glen Park. I hear from all kinds of people that the place that they couldn't go before, the place that we couldn't go when I was a kid growing up in Coquitlam, because of the needles, because of the, is now a place where every single day I see people, families, enjoying Glen Park because of the work that they've done. So hats off. I think there's some important lessons, as you said, important lessons we can learn. Your next item.
Parking at Town Center. This is one, I guess, a minute ago we talked about the use of the upper lot. And I know that in the past, when there have been sporting events, the lower lot becomes full very quickly. The one next to the stadium, the north side of the stadium, next to the East Fields, right. So that's becoming very congested. People pull in there. Once they're in there, they know where to park, and they start parking on the curbs, and then it becomes an enforcement issue. And this becomes particularly frustrating when we're having tournaments there because they're visitors to our city. And I think that one of the problems is that they don't realize that there's parking up at the upper lot. I know that some of the tournament organizers will send notices out to the team saying, when you come to this field, but the Google Maps and things tend to come to that parking lot. They tend to still come in off of Pipeline. And I'm wondering if we could put some signage up there saying this area is actively enforced, alternate parking is available, and a sign or a map that directs them there. And I'm thinking in particular that we've got the big friendship tournament coming up in 2 weeks' time. It's a week's time now. And if we could get some kind of signage up there so that we don't have the same problem again this year.
I think it's an excellent idea. I think, as I said, with Evergreen and other things going on there, there's ever more pressure, and I think directing people to overflow parking is a good thing. So we'll look into it.
We can do it for that because, again, it's education, not enforcement.
Is a longer-term fix available to us? There is enough space for a connecting roadway between the two parking lots. And then you wouldn't have two parking lots that are both dead ends that are almost 10 minutes apart. And so you drop off the soccer balls at the one because you're the coach, and then you're 10 minutes before you can get back to the field that your kids are playing on. And we get that complaint all the time.
Frankly, I haven't had a chance to look at that issue at all. It's just recently been raised to me, so certainly under council direction, we can take a look at the way that parking, not just the supply, but how it actually works. Sometimes parking lot designs actually create more chaos. That people, they don't know it's a single way in and out. They don't know it's full. Some of these things create quite a bit of problems. But I haven't had a chance to look into the issue, but I certainly can.
You've had no time.
Craig and I will walk it tomorrow. We'll design a.
We're going to design it. But I just think with the work that's being done on the new field, if there's an opportunity to at least look at that, I hear that all the time. That it's 2-3 left turns to get up and around, and it's difficult in traffic to even get out of that entrance on Pipeline. I know there's plans in the future to fix that intersection, but sometimes you can even see the parking lot there, but you can't get to it. I mean, I've often wondered if we could put a roadway up through there, but as I said, with the work that's being done in Town Center North, maybe there's a chance to address that.
And with that work, we're going to have to close part of that parking lot. The main parking lot is going to be a third of it. So we are having to deal with some of this, and we will bring back, I said, I have the intention of bringing back a report that just updates council on a number of things going on, that make sure we're coordinating, some of our events with some of these parking area closures or impacted areas, and I could certainly include that review as part of it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Very good. Take a